SABC News correspondent Alex Cadier joins us live now from Tel Aviv with the latest. Alex, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We're very curious to find out the latest update on the ground in reaction to, of course, the Iranian attacks. We understand that currently air raid sirens are currently sounding across Israel, which also reported that about 300 drones and missiles targeted the country, most of which were, of course, intercepted. Quite a lot happened there overnight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Although the air raid sirens have now been quiet for a few hours, they were sounding overnight, but they stopped very early in the morning. It was a period of a couple of hours where it was incredibly uncertain. People across Israel staying very close to their bomb shelters, many aware of exactly where their nearest refuge was, including us here in this building. Now, it was a sleepless night, a tense night. You had 185 drones, 36 cruise missiles and 110 ballistic missiles targeting all parts of Israel. We saw explosions in the sky over the holy city of Jerusalem. You had interceptions over Beersheba, which has about 200,000 people. It's clear that if those interceptions hadn't taken place, both by the Israeli defenses, the Israeli Air Force, the US Air Force, and we've just had confirmation the British Royal Air Force intercepting those drones, as well as the Jordanians, then it's clear that there could have been many more casualties across Israel. And that was, of course, the real concern. And now the big question is what Israel's response will be. The War Cabinet is meeting as we speak, and there is a big question as to what kind, if any, retaliation will come from Israel. But certainly it has been a very difficult 24 hours, very tense, quite frightening for people across Israel, with that enormous barrage of weaponry coming through the skies from Iran. The first direct attack from Iran, which now says the matter has been concluded, but clearly a lot of tension still in the region.
Very interesting, Alex. I mean, yesterday you strongly advised against the fact that this is not yet, a full-on war. But I mean, with rumors that Russia has now also come in the fore, saying that it will defend anybody who strikes against Iran. So we could be looking at wider spread tension resulting from these attacks.
And that's part of the reason why President Joe Biden told Israel that the United States would not stand by any retaliatory action by Israel against Iran. And that is a very big ask, you can imagine, for our viewers back home in South Africa. If South Africa had been attacked by hundreds of drones, the Israeli argument would be that you would want to defend yourselves and retaliate. And that is clearly the position of a lot of Israeli politicians. We have unnamed Israeli officials talking to media here saying there will be a significant response, but under enormous pressure from the United States and the global powers not to escalate this any further. We've had Iran already warning that if a response came from Israel, there would be a much heavier and more severe response from Iran. So we could be on the edge of an escalation, on the edge of war, but there is a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of diplomatic work going on by the United States. We know the UN Security Council will meet as well. The Israeli War Cabinet meeting as we speak. What they decide, how they decide to go about this will be crucial. Now, one of the key issues in that Iranian strike that is being seen by Israeli officials as a real escalation is the use of those 110 ballistic missiles, some of the most powerful weaponry out there, targeting that airbase from which the jets launched that strike in Damascus just about 2 weeks ago now. So clearly there's a real fear of escalation, but a lot of pressure on Israel, on Iran, not to escalate and not to plunge this region into further conflict.
Now, Alex, interesting the fact that these attacks were reported on Saturday, just shortly after Hamas had said that it had handed its response to the ceasefire proposal to the mediators in Egypt and Qatar. So what does this then mean in relation to those talks?
Well, Hamas's response was no. Quite simply, we will not compromise on any of our demands, and we will not change any of our requests in these negotiations. They continue to say they want the full withdrawal of Israeli troops, the full return of civilians without Israeli security checks to the north of Gaza, and that is despite what Israeli officials describe as significant flexibility. We've seen them increase the number of Palestinian prisoners they would release in exchange for 40 hostages. We have seen them increase the number of civilians they say they will allow back to northern Gaza. So the sentiment from the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency led by David Barnea, who was part of these negotiations, is that the leader of Hamas does not want a deal. Now, the argument made by the Palestinians, of course, is that there is no deal to be made and that the Israeli troops should just withdraw without conditions. So clearly, that has not progressed, that has not moved forward. There is a possibility, of course, of escalation by proxies, and that will be the big question in Israel's response. If it is a direct strike against Iran, there is a very serious risk of escalation, or Israel could continue to fight Iran's proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthi rebels in Yemen. There could be targets against those groups and not against Iran directly, which would allow a path to de-escalation, allow a path to avoiding all-out war in the region. And certainly that de-escalation is top of mind, top priority for the international community, including Israel's allies.
And in closing it, in relation to those proxies, Alex, I mean, the U.S. being heavily invested in arming and defending Israel. I know a lot of people are saying that, of course, Israel is its close ally at this stage, has to be closely questioned. With former U.S. President, though, Donald Trump coming out and heading out at Biden over the Iranian attack on Israel.
Well, Donald Trump also said that we had a spokesperson from Donald Trump just a few moments ago saying that there was peace in the Middle East until Joe Biden became president. So you have to take some of the statements from the former president with a pinch of salt, and they are running up to an election. So it is perhaps unsurprising that a rival candidate would attack President Biden's record in the Middle East. Now, there is a lot of criticism, not just from Donald Trump, but some of the United States allies in their support for Israel. There has been widespread international condemnation for what is seen as impunity in the actions of the Israeli military's actions, chief among which, of course, South Africa's case to the International Court of Justice, concentrating those legal arguments, concentrating the accountability and scrutiny of Israel's actions and the US support in the last few months. Of course, that process will take a long time, but there is, you're right to say, condemnation and criticism of the United States, but that is particularly when it comes to the conflict in Gaza. And what some experts are saying is that this massive attack by Iran, some see as disproportionate, particularly the use of more than 100 ballistic missiles targeting areas in which civilians were located in Israel, could shift the balance into a slightly more reasoned position and allow more conversations and discourse to happen across the region, possibly, and this is a long way away, leading to some kind of sustained peace.
Alex, thank you so much for that update. That is SABC News correspondent in Tel Aviv, Alex Cadier.